Welcome again, guys, to the Balanced Business Dad. We are on episode 13 here. And remember, the Balanced Business Dad is where we are providing a platform of the important pillars of life while building a council of dads to support each other as we work to balance our lives. Dads, my name is Dustin Hogue, and as always, I'm here with my co-host, RJ Campbell.
Hello, guys.
Say what's up.
What's up? What's up?
Today, guys, I am extremely honored because we are interviewing someone that's extremely near and dear to my heart, which is actually my coach. Been my coach for almost 2 years now, I think, which is crazy. And there's been a lot of growth in my life since then. So I'm sure we're going to dive into that. But guys, we have Craig Fuhr out of Maryland with us today. Craig, how are you?
Dude, it's a pleasure.
Awesome.
Can't believe I'm here. I'm very excited to be here.
So am I. This is good. So, guys, Craig is a husband, a father, a real estate investor, a coach, a gun enthusiast that actually competes shooting, or at least did in the past. I mean, and he probably has a resume of all sorts of little fun, weird, quirky jobs like that too, that I'm sure we're going to get into. But more than that, he's a man that has changed my life and has quite a journey himself too that I hope we're going to dive into. So, guys, we're going to just jump right into it. And Craig, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh man, you really encapsulated all the important stuff. I was several years ago, I'll never forget, bro. I was sitting in a mastermind meeting, and this particular mastermind never had guests. But the guy who ran the mastermind invited a guest, and I was sort of like in between stuff. I'd been doing these real estate seminars that cost like all this crazy money, and we made a whole bunch of money off of them. But they kind of the whole model started changing, and I was really in this sort of in between place. And this guy who stands up and speaks, really captivating guy. His name's Darren Collins, by the way. He's a great guy. He stands up and he's talking about sort of who we are, who are you? And he looks at me of the 25 or 30 people in the room, points at me and says, "Brother, who are you?" And I was like, oh, he's not talking to me. Joe McCall was sitting right next to me at the time. And I said, "Joe, he must be speaking to you." And he said, no, I'm sure he's speaking to you. And I said, "Oh, great."
Great.
He goes, "No, I am speaking to you. Who are you?" Well, it was everything I could do at that moment not to literally burst into tears, because I was at this place in my life where I couldn't really answer that question in a way that I know my heart wanted me to answer it. And today, if you ask me that question, I can tell you absolutely who I am. I'm a Christian, I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I'm a collaborator, creator. It's what I love to do. Those are the things. And if I'm doing any of those things, Christian, husband, father, coach, collaborator, creator, doesn't seem like work at that point. It's just great. So that's who I am. Thanks for asking.
Wow.
Hope that wasn't too long of an answer.
It might have been a little long, but yet it was extremely powerful, because guys, what I heard there is how you identify yourself is everything, right? We're looking for so much that we want to identify ourselves as what people think we want to hear versus how we truly want to identify ourselves. Mm-hmm. And what I heard is how Craig identifies himself is exactly what he wants to be doing. Yep. That was actually a very powerful statement. So, yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's huge.
It took me a while to get there, man. And like I walked out of that meeting so messed up. It's one I really didn't want to be at. Like when you don't have anything good to say, the last thing you want to do is show up to a mastermind, and the spotlight goes on you, and you're like, oh crap, So yeah, I really vowed at that moment to figure it out, figure out what is my purpose, what is the thing that I'm really put here, what did God give me that's unique and great, and how am I gifted, and how can I use those things for the benefit of me and God and others? And so, not necessarily in that order, but man, it's been a real journey, and it's been one that I'm thankful that you've been on with me. You've seen the changes in my life over the past 2 years, just as you've seen the massive changes in yours. And man, I was just talking to a guy today, Dustin, that here's a guy, by all accounts, all of us would say this guy has it all. Great kids, unbelievable real estate investing business, crazy good coaching business. The guy is easily in the top 1% of earners and has a great life, but still has this voice inside of him that says, not enough. It's not enough. And I've got to go and when I look in the mirror, I see a person who's not enough. That's what he would say. You know, I see a man who's searching, who isn't where he thought he would be, who doesn't have what he thought he would have, doesn't have the bank account, doesn't have the marriage, doesn't have all these things. And it's funny. He called me about 90 days ago looking for advice and sort of help on some projects that he was working on. And I told him I'd look into it. I said, send me over everything you got. I'll take a look at everything and I'll let you know. I'll give you my input. But I could tell, dude, his brain, he was so scattershot in the phone call. It was like he was being shot out of a cannon, and he was just spewing off everything he could during this call with me, that I said to myself, I could go through all of his material. I could tell him exactly what to do, but chances are he's not going to do it because he just doesn't know what he wants in life. He's not grounded. He doesn't know who he is or what he is.
So no direction at all. No idea on direction.
But if I'd have said that to him on that phone call, he would have said, no, I'm 100% focused. I'm on fire. Look at me. I'm crazy. No, dude, you're not. You're everywhere. And so he called me today, and he was profusely thankful. He was like, I can't believe it's been that long since we talked, and let me tell you where I've been since then. And holy cow, what a journey. And I could hear a totally different man today on the phone call. So when we know who we are, and when we have clarity, when we've taken the time to really rest in that clarity, I think good things happen from that.
Wow. So that is just one example of somebody being out of balance and going into the work, the inner work, which is something I've been really talking about a lot to all the people I coach and stuff like that. But it's that inner work that we have to get involved into. So wow, Craig, so you know that on the Balance Business Dad, we talk about the 6 pillars that we talk of. I learned a lot of these pillars from you. You call them something different, but I'm not, hey, first of all, I found out that you can't steal the truth. So I didn't steal some of these from you. They're the truth.
How many pillars do you have?
We have 6, and they're not
funny,
all
I have
Fs.
8. Are they Fs?
No, they're not. So the first one is, and you mentioned that a little bit today, and that is faith.
Yeah.
And myself, RJ's as well, not that I want to speak for him, and I know yours, it all starts with the faith we have, right? In our God, in our Christianity, and that's how we move forward, and that's really how we want to choose to live our lives. So then we go into health, we go into marriage, we go into fatherhood, we go into brotherhood, and then we go into our career in that order. So I would love to hear a time, Craig, because I know there's so many stories we can go, and I'm trying not to know all the stories, but I know a lot of your stories. But let's just talk about a time that you were out of balance in some of these, or let's talk about the pillars in your life and how they are now versus how they were, especially that time before you knew how to answer and identify yourself.
Yeah.
So shoot.
Well, you know that I've been a real estate investor, mainly residential flipping, for about 15 years. And while I don't do nearly as much of that as I used to, there was a time during really 2004 through 2012 where it consumed me. I mean, I was doing, at any given time, I'd have 10 to 12 projects going on, mostly very large flips in Baltimore City and the surrounding areas. And, these are like 100-year-old houses that needed 80, 90, 100, 150 grand of rehab. And so, when you're kind of spread out all over the place, plus I'm wearing the acquisition machine, the disposition machine, the marketing machine, the contractor management machine. I was all of the guys. I literally was a band of one doing all of these projects and sort of trying to keep it all together. And yeah, man, things got out of whack pretty good there. I had a young family. My son was born in 2006, my daughter in 2008. I had a wife who works a full-time job and everything that comes along with that, right? And so I think what's crazy is, when I speak around the country and I'm standing in a room full of people and I say, hey, tell me why you all got into this business. The number one reason they raise their hands, what do they say?
Freedom.
More freedom, right? More freedom. Every single time, without fail, it happens 100% of the time. That's what most people say. Yet, what do we find when we get into this business? We have probably less freedom and free time than we did when we were working our full-time JOBs.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I discovered during that time was, holy crap, my life is so completely out of whack from a from a time management and sort of priority standpoint. And I was getting ready to go off to the same mastermind. Actually, this was a long time ago mastermind. And my wife was dropping me off at the airport. And we only live about 10 minutes from BWI. And so we pull up to the curb and we're a little early. And she kind of looks at me like, are you going to get the hell out? And I was like, oh, I guess I am. And she looks at me as I open the door and she goes, I hope that those people can do something for you while you're there, because I sure as shit can't while you're here at home.
Damn.
And wow. I look over at her and she's wearing sunglasses and she's got tears rolling down her face. And I was like, holy crap, like where in the hell did this come from?
So out of the blue that happened.
Kind of out of the blue, but in retrospect, it wasn't so out of the blue, right? It was perfectly timed and completely appropriate. And the worst part is, man, is like, I kind of pride myself on having a good marriage. I kind of pride myself on having an open conversation type marriage. Right. And this completely hit me between the eyes. And, so much so that, I really didn't have anyone to turn to other than this pastor that I met in a cigar store. So I'm over the course of a year or so, I'm in the cigar store. This big black dude comes walking in. He's well dressed. He's eating Chick-fil-A, and I hear him go, "I need the mayor on one side, and I need the governor on the right hand side of me during that meeting, and that's the way it's got to be. Just make sure it happens." I'm like, "Holy crap, who is this guy?" So we get to talking, and the crazy part is the guy never once said to me, "What do you do for a living?" And I don't think I ever said it to him, but it got to a point one day where he was like, "Here's my card. I run a little church over in Howard County, Maryland. You should stop by sometime." And I'd always say, "Yeah, man, I'll be there on Sunday. I'll see you there." I'd never go,
Yeah.
And my dad was dying about 10 years ago. And I told him in the shop one day, and he'd always ask, "How's your dad? How's your dad?" Well, he didn't have to ask long because my dad died pretty quickly. He had cancer for about 4 months and passed away. So he comes into the shop one day, and he could see that I was pretty down. And he said, "It's your dad, right?" And I said, "Yeah, man." He goes, "Man, we got a great men's group over here at the church, and you should stop by. You think you'd really get a lot out of it." And of course I said, "I'll be there. Be there on Saturday.
I'll be there."
Well, long and short was I needed to be there with Tracy and I. And he was the only guy I could think of calling. And so one night when things got pretty bad, we were kind of yelling at each other pretty good. I said, "Look, I promise you I'll get help. I'll do whatever I got to do. I'll change." And I called him the next day and I said, "Man, you told me if I ever needed this card to give you a call." And he goes, "And I meant it. Come stop by my office today at such and such a time, and you could stay as long as you want." Well, that turned into quite a relationship. And I really look at that guy as, I look at him as a life raft. Jesus is our life saver, right? But this guy, if he didn't throw me the life raft, I'd have never gotten on, because I got down on my knees in his office that day in front of him, and I asked Jesus Christ to be my Lord and Savior, and thank God I've been saved ever since. So, and it really was the turning point in our relationship, where it's taken a long time. That was over 10 years ago now, but I think it'll be 11 years this year in December, as a matter of fact. And so, yeah, man, heavily out of balance at that time, but faith definitely became a center point.
Wow.
So you accepted Christ that day, first day you were meeting with him.
Well, I had been a believer all my life, and sort of a Reformed Catholic. This was an evangelical church, and so it's definitely a fish out of water kind of walking in. But man, I fell in love with the place, and I don't go there now because I have a couple little philosophical differences with the way they're running things, but still love the guy for what he did in my life. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things I wanted to. You said a little church. Isn't it a massive church that this gentleman ran?
Yeah, he's got about 10,000, 20,000 members there now. It's a multi-million-dollar church with, it's a big place. Yeah, it's massive. And
you stick out like a sore thumb there.
That's what I was just going to ask.
It's about 60% Black, but multicultural on purpose.
Awesome.
We, on any given Sunday, there's like 50, 60 countries represented in the congregation there. They have translation services. It's called Bridgeway Community Church in Howard County, Maryland. Highly recommend it. The pastor's name is Dr. David Anderson. If you ever see him, he'll be the biggest black dude in the foyer, and probably the best dressed. And tell him that Craig Fuhr sent you. It's an amazing place. The best worship set you'll ever sit through, the most amazing musicians, and the message is always just so tight. It's a really, really amazing church.
Wow, that's awesome. And what a story that was to go to so out of balance, and how really everything that started putting the pieces back together started with faith. It started with finding God.
It really was the cornerstone of everything. And when you're born again, it can really mess you up pretty good, because you might be an adult in real life, but you're just a baby in Christ's eyes. And so I just wanted to spend all my waking moments at like Tuesday night prayer and, Saturday service and reading the Bible when I'm supposed to be working. And yeah, it was definitely an interesting time.
Interesting. So you kind of alluded to the fact there that you can go a little far in this because you're not doing what you need to be doing, what God wants you to be doing at the time. And it's kind of the excuse, no, I'm learning. Yeah, God kind of wants you to be working on some other things right there too. So wow, what a story. So I mean, that talks about the faith pillar. The health one I'm going to bring up because it starts number 2. And I smile when I say that, because honestly, you and I have been on this journey together. I mean, let's be honest.
Yep.
So we'll tell us about yours, and then I'm sure we're going to go into a little bit deeper, because I'm sure RJ has questions, because we're kind of like laughing at each other while we're looking at each other. But you'll start, and then RJ can take away the questions.
Yeah, it's funny, man. Like, so you and I was your coach in a mastermind, and at the time I was probably 100 pounds at least overweight, and it was throughout that journey that you were on that, frankly, I got inspired to do the same. I don't know whether it was talking with Chuck, our co-coach at the time, who was kind of like, Chuck had a way of making you feel guilty about things without actually being a total prick all the time about it. But yes, he said a couple of things to me that sort of jarred me. And one of the things was just sort of like what it means to be disciplined. It's man, I mean, how many men do we know, bro, that if they could just get a little bit more discipline in their lives, their lives would change immeasurably, like yours
Absolutely.
And mine have, right?
Absolutely.
And I don't think what you and I have done fitness-wise has taken a little bit of discipline, but it took a little bit of discipline every single day, right?
Yeah.
And that is the thing that really changed me. Watching you go hit the road, 4 a.m. or whatever ridiculous time you woke up, or, going to the gym to get your head batted in, or I just kind of sat back one day and I was like, well, shit, how can I ask this guy to do it? How can I challenge him to get fit if I'm not going to do it myself? And I had already started, like, this was 2 years ago, or about a year and a half ago. I'd already started walking, but I wanted to kind of, I wasn't seeing the amount of results that I wanted. And so I started jogging almost every single night. And I had never done a 5K in my life, but I started jogging a 5 or a 10K almost every single night for an entire summer into the fall, really into the spring, summer, and fall of, 2021. Yeah, 2021, right? And so, yeah, man, I mean, I wound up losing 90 pounds. My blood sugar was all out of whack, and I kind of got that back into shape, still on a couple meds for that. I find myself, Dustin, that I meditate every single night, sometimes for hours a night. I'll put on Joe Dispenza, and I'll listen to 2 or 3 of those that are at least an hour long. Most people meditate for 20 minutes, and I'm doing it for 3 hours a night, every single night. And I really attribute that to the unbelievable clarity that I have in my life right now in terms of my business and my coaching and everything that I'm doing.
Wow. That is pretty similar. So you started, you're saying that just a little after Dustin from watching him.
Yeah, I was probably walking. Like, my wife would go to the gym, like in the morning, she would wake up again, like, dark 30 and go to the gym. And I was, I'm like, well, hell, if I go out walking, I'll meet her back here right at the same time. We can jump in the shower together, and I might get a slice. Can I say that on the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all for guys, right? So sure enough, that plan worked out, and I'm like, well, shit, I better keep on doing this. So I was walking and maybe jogging every now and again. Then COVID happened, and then everybody was walking during COVID, right?
Right.
And so my wife and I would walk, and then I'd say, hey, you know what? I think I'll go for a run. And that run turned into running every single night where I would, tell myself, hey man, great going tonight. And it was that little bit of discipline every day that started to really build. And I started to look at myself as, holy shit, maybe you are a disciplined person after all, Craig.
So is that kind of what you said, discipline? And you mentioned earlier, it didn't take big discipline, but a little bit of discipline every day. Is that where you learned that? Absolutely.
In the absence of discipline, if you can just get a little bit of it in your life every day, that turns into a snowball, it's a good thing.
So it's not all big steps.
That's right.
Little bites at a time. They'll eventually eat that elephant.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so then I have to ask this because I know both of you are coaches, and then I hear Dustin coach pretty much every day because they're in an office together. So I'll hear him in his coaching calls or people that are in the office. But Craig, what's it like to coach Dustin?
I don't know. Am I allowed to answer that?
Absolutely.
I say, Dustin, that one's up to you. I don't know if I'm going into, doctor-patient privileges here.
Let's go.
No, it's honestly, look, I never really looked at myself as a coach, frankly. I have a hard time, I guess, with that moniker. I just try to ask good questions and be honest and vulnerable and push them in the right directions. But it's been a total joy. I mean, it's not only changed his life, but it's changed mine. And that's really what coaching is all about, right? When the teacher learns more than the student. So it's been a total joy to watch him be a better father, be a better husband, be a better businessman, be more fit. And then not only that, but now getting to see all of the fruits of it. Like, could his business be better in certain aspects? I'm sure it could. It always could. But is he on fire? Yeah, man. I mean, I think you're on fire in a way that you certainly would have never. I wonder if you would have even dreamt of it back when we first met.
Not at all.
Owning the campground, looking at another campground, getting ready to own an ancillary business that's completely unrelated to real estate. Dude, I think you're on fire in ways that I think that you'd never dream of 2 years ago.
100% agree with that. And it's kind of funny we talked about that because the discipline. And we've talked about my journey and my health journey a couple times on the podcast, and I don't need to go into that. Yet it was the discipline that did it, and it's discipline every day. It's discipline to this day, right? And now how to every obstacle that comes my way, I just do the exact same steps I did to go through that journey. Yep. And that's what gets us through that. And it's the discipline, having discipline every day. So
yeah, I'll be honest with you. And this is a little bit of an aside. I post-COVID was really dealing with some pretty heavy health stuff, and I literally sapped my energy. Like I could barely get up to make dinner, much less clean the kitchen or, these types of things. And so I've been struggling literally since Thanksgiving of last year, which is when I got COVID, with this sort of like getting my energy back. And it's only through that daily discipline of, no man, put on the running shoes, put on your goddamn sweats and go to the gym and move your body. Like, it's only through that I really feel like I've gotten back to, a percentage of what I had in terms of energy, just that daily discipline of, as Chuck used to say, putting on the floaties and jumping in the pool, man.
Yeah. So Craig's mentioned a couple times, so all the listeners out there who don't know, in our mastermind, and I might get choked up saying this, but in the mastermind where Craig was my coach, there was also a co-coach with him named Chuck. Chuck passed away last year. Chuck's a man who definitely taught me this discipline, definitely taught Craig discipline, but taught us a lot about that. So that's who he's saying every time he's mentioning Chuck.
Yeah, and I as an interesting story, when I got saved, it was funny. The pastor of the church, very busy guy, as you can imagine, he would put all these people in my path, and I wouldn't even know it. Like, it'd be like all of a sudden I'd be standing in the foyer one day and I'd have 3 guys walk up to me. Oh, you must be Craig. Or, I would be at choir practice. I joined the choir and, people would come up and say, hey, and it was all these men, from all different walks of life. But there was this one guy, I was walking off the stage one night after a choir practice, and I come down the steps and he says, you must be Craig. You know who I am? And I said, I don't believe I do. And he said, well, they call me the mayor around here. And I said, is that right? He goes, yeah, you can call me Kevin. I said, well, my name's Craig. And he goes, I know what your name is. And he never called me Craig ever again. He always called me son. I'm gonna get choked up. This man, it didn't matter where he was, how long it was since we talked. He would call me no matter what. He would just, hey son, how you doing? Just want to check in to see what's going on. When are we getting together for coffee? We did a Bible study together. We'd get together for coffee, and I would disappear if I was going through something. I would do like what men do. I would go down, into my hole, and he would sure enough call. Well, one of the things that not many people knew at the time was he passed away almost 1 month to the day before Chuck did. Same exact thing, where he was like 62, just retired, wasn't in the greatest shape, but he wasn't in horrible shape. And my spiritual mentor, this man who literally was my father here on earth, he died suddenly, just sitting in his chair one day in September of last year. And then Chuck died almost like a month to the day later. And so these 2 great men in my life, man, just both passed away at the same time. Sort of Kevin as my spiritual guy, the guy who modeled all of the 8 F's, right? Faith, fitness, fortress, fidelity, fatherhood, fellowship, finance, fun. This guy modeled it all for me without actually saying, Craig, this is how I live my life. He was just the perfect model. And then Chuck was like the model of the hard work. Chuck was, okay, so you got this plan. Here's how you're going to go execute it. And to lose both of those guys within a matter of just a few days was devastating.
Wow.
And we get to continue their work through them, right? Because of what they taught us.
Yep.
So I'm going to take this a little bit different than I planned on, because you mentioned a couple times men, a group of men, a Bible study for men, these men that would be in your life, your mentor, Kevin there. So one of our pillars, not skipping, we've talked about your marriage, not skipping over that by any means, you're a father, not skipping over that yet, but brotherhood is one that honestly gets overlooked a lot, right? Brotherhood gets overlooked in our lives as men, especially as busy businessmen, right? Because we're doing all this stuff. So yeah, our friends are there if we want to ever go have a beer. Yeah, we don't have time for that beer, or we don't have time for that coffee, right? But it sounds like brotherhood in the last, 10, 15 years has been the utmost important thing for you to get it through there.
Yeah, man, I refer to it as fellowship, and you're absolutely right. I just think we're living in some really weird times, man. And I think it's really, I don't care. If you're listening to this podcast, you can admit it or you can't. But I think it is a difficult time to be a man in America, or really in the West for that matter. Manhood's under attack. Masculinity's under attack. It's toxic. We live in the evil patriarchy. It's so I think that if you just take that, that alone makes it a little bit difficult. And then, you throw on a crazy economy or an economic bubble every few years, or the fact that the cost of housing has gone up through the roof and we're trying to send kids to private school. It's not an easy time to be a guy or an entrepreneur.
Right.
And we often wonder, well, who do I turn to? Who do I look towards? I just got off the phone with a guy today that we talked about, which blew my mind. 2 guys that we both knew together. Both of them are in rehab right now.
Wow. And
you would have never, ever known it had you have been talking to either of these 2 guys. You would have looked at both of them and you would have said, unbelievably wealthy, totally got everything going on, great wives, great families, they've got all the money they could ever need, the businesses are amazing, and both of them are struggling for their lives in rehab right now.
Wow. The pressure of being a man? Is that a lot
Right.
of it?
Say again, I'm sorry.
Was it the pressure of being a man, the father,
Man, when you look in the mirror, and if the inner voice, the inner lunatic, as my friend Ron Phillips calls it, or the demons of self-doubt, as I call it, if when you look in the mirror and you say, and you hear words like, it's not enough, you're not good enough, or when are you going to start this, or how come you haven't got this many zeros in your bank account, or this guy has this, how come you don't have this, or why am I only getting sex from my wife once every 6 months, or how many more could I go into?
Right.
And then top it off with, you don't have any sort of belief in anything bigger than yourself, nor do you have an outlet of fellowship where you can trust the person to go at least talk to them, much less get some advice from them. It's just a recipe for sure and certain disaster at that point, isn't it?
Yeah,
Right.
It is.
So guys, dads that are listening to this right now, I think we just hit on something that, again, I wasn't planning on hitting on by any means, but have an outlier, right? I mean, this is why RJ and I have started this, and we're working on the Dad's Council, which I'll say what that is in a few minutes here, but it's going into this, that make sure you have that support group of something where you can reach out to, and you can reach out to someone to just talk to ask for help, to ask for guidance, because we have to have that. We're in this together. Right. And I believe it's challenging today. It's challenging to do that because society thinks men are strong. No, we need the help too. Right.
Yeah,
so
we do.
That's huge. Thank you for sharing.
It doesn't mean you're not strong if you need help.
Correct. Correct.
Doesn't mean you're not strong. In fact, I think it shows a lot of vulnerability and truth and courage to call up a guy and go, hey, man, I am effing struggling today, and I've been struggling for a minute. And if I don't get some help on this particular topic, I'm going to lose a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't think that those kinds of relationships aren't forged overnight. But when you find people like that in your life, I think it's something really special to hold on to.
Yeah, and we don't want to mention those things. And there's a gentleman that we'll have lined up to interview on this podcast, and we'll hear his whole story then. But long time, very dear friend of mine. There are three guys that are very close, and even though you're together for years and you think you and your good friends, you're going to have a beer a lot, but you don't get into those deep conversations. And the three of us were in a car driving across the state, going to a football game in Kansas City for a weekend, see the Chiefs play.
Yeah.
And this guy just opened up. We just thought we knew each other, and he started talking about struggles he'd had for years, a son battling addiction. We had no idea whatsoever. And because you're afraid to bring those things up. It's right. Scary to be that vulnerable, even to your closest friends and to the guys. And then it turned into an hour of just a support group as we're buzzing along Highway 70 across Missouri. It's tough.
I'm sorry. When you hear that, though, it's shocking how many people go, holy cow, you too?
Yeah.
I didn't know you were struggling with that too. I've been struggling with that for or I have a very good friend or a member of my family.
Yep.
It could be anything, it could be infidelity. It could be porn. It could be drugs. It could be alcohol. It could be, you're losing your business and you don't want to tell your wife about it. It could be any of those things. Right. And holy crap, man. I mean, how many guys have I met over the last several years that, and this is really before I even got into coaching, guys that would just call me up and say, Craig, you're a guy I know I can confide in. And I guess that's it. We talked earlier about sort of finding your purpose and your gifts, man. And that's thankfully one of mine that people just tend to confide in me like that. So, yeah.
And it's interesting. It's one of those things that you're right. Once somebody finally starts saying it, that's when the other people are opening up. Yep. And something that, Craig, I've seen you do since we've known each other, and something I intend to do, and I know something RJ intends to do. What would the world look like for the guys if we just started opening up more? Right? Because then it's that safe zone, right? Do people come to you because you have opened up and tell the world that you're messed up? Right? Craig's one of those people I've seen him in front of a room of 5,000 people stand on the stage and say, I'm screwed up. Right?
I don't know if it was 5,000, but it was certainly 500. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't have look, man, I don't know that I'm an open book, but I'm pretty open. I don't tell the world everything. But look, man, I'm a guy and I suffer with the same exact shit that most guys suffer with. Do I look at porn? Yeah, I've watched porn. Do I drink too much? Sometimes. But not always, but I can, do I do stupid shit that I shouldn't do? Yeah, all the time. And am I proud of it? No. And I pray to God almost every single night. And I say, God, please don't let me do that tomorrow. Like, I'm not perfect.
Yeah, there's a few of us that are unique in these ways. We all think we suffer our own separate, we have our own burden and nobody else must have it. And you're afraid to bring that up, to tell your friends about it. And then you get the Me Too's, like you just mentioned. It's like, yeah, here's what I have.
Yep. Something you just said there that really caught me. You're praying and it's like, God, don't let me do that again. Don't let me do that tomorrow. Right?
Yeah.
That's huge. I've heard that a couple times, and I heard, hey, I know people, Ed Milet, we were just at a conference listening to Ed Milet talk, and Ed Milet said, he asked his dad, so are you never drinking again? And what his dad promised him, he's like, I can't promise you that, but I will promise you I won't drink tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
And guys, what if that's what it is, right? I try to teach my son this. My daughter's probably a little too young to start teaching this, and probably my son is too. But hey, we're just going to be better tomorrow. And every day, we're just going to be better than we are today, right? So, wow, there's a lot of valuable lessons in your story and your journey there, Craig. Appreciate that so much. So we've talked about what you did in the past and how you've coached in this real estate. What are you doing now when it comes to career? What's kind of the thing you're focused on?
Yeah. So I just want to go back to that. While I answer that, I'll go back to this really cool book that I read. I know you've seen it before. I wish I had it handy. It's called Establishing Your Purpose by Ministry in the Marketplace. It's a little tiny book. It costs $5, Establishing Your Purpose. And the book is it's biblical, and it has this little tiny book that you can get through in like an hour and a half. It has a ton of like biblical references in it to sort of prove it out. And so there's three basic purposes in the universe, right? There's God's universal purpose, which we'll call that the outer ring. Okay. And we really don't know what that is. The Bible sort of talks about like, heaven, about a little bit what it's like, but we really won't know until, and hopefully we get to heaven. And there's God's ultimate purpose. And that is to use to basically serve others, right, through him. And we'll call that the sort of the next circle in. And then the inner circle, the one that's closest, is the unique purpose. Every single one of us, I don't care who you are, was born with something. We were all born with something. For some people, they have an amazing knack for math. Other people, have the X factor. They have that sort of energy that is sort of that charismatic energy. Other people, are great writers. It doesn't matter what it is, but there's something inside of you that is like DNA level that you do really well. And when you're doing it, it doesn't feel like work. Some people would say that you're in your unique genius zone at that point, right? And so that's really what I've been leaning into over the past few years, Dustin, is just what is my unique genius zone? What is that unique purpose that God has given me, and how can I use it to serve others in His name, right? And I don't get that right every day, but one of the things that I have been doing and leaning into a lot more is I started a group of men that I'm really excited about, small group. It's invite only type of thing, and I think it's making a massive difference for the several months that we've been together. It feels like it's getting better and better as we go along, which is awesome. And the gifts that I get to use in that, well, the collaborator part, right? I'm a collaborator. I love to write. I love to help guys where I can. I have a real burden for men and sort of how they get through life. And while I may not be the best coach, I'm a really great listener. And I ask good questions. And so when the guys need me, I'm always there for them. And that's fantastic. So I've been doing a lot of that. From a real estate standpoint, I was sort of living vicariously through all of my students with rehabbing and wholesaling, but I even got out of that and I started getting into bigger stuff. And so I partnered up with one of the guys in my group, and he comes from a Wall Street background where he was raising big capital for mobile home parks. The guy probably knows the mobile home space better than 99% of the people in the country. He just knows that asset class like the back of his hand. He raised over $250 million in the past few years by himself in capital to do it. So he and I have a park under contract right now, 50 spaces. We may or may not get the thing because we're just sort of like, is it the right one? We're seeing some that are better. So we're excited about that. We're excited about sort of how much, just in the matter of 3 months, Dustin, that we've been able to get a look at a lot of different assets, which is exciting in that space. That in multifamily and sort of as you start to go up in price, it's kind of, you got to look at a lot of properties before you get to one. We've seen quite a few that actually were decent deals. So that's exciting. So I'm doing that. And then I'm doing some consulting with some people that run different masterminds and different coaching groups. I'm sort of helping them hone what they do.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So you are busy. So the last two questions that I'm going to start closing these out with, but one is, what do you do? Do you have a tip, a trick, anything like that you do if you start realizing your life's out of balance? Is there something you do to put it back in?
I think that, yeah, man, prayer, journaling,
love that answer.
Meditation, and then just putting together the streak, as we used to say with Chuck, right? So like, I know if my life is out of balance from an exercise standpoint, I'm not getting enough exercise in, which frankly, I can say that over the past several weeks, but if that's not in balance, if I know I need to get back to the gym, I need to, one, have some intention about it. Like I need to set a goal. Two, I need to then keep track of that goal, either by journaling about it or just, keeping some sort of track, monthly, a daily marker. And then three, I need to put the streak together. And it is, how long can I keep this streak going? Yep. I don't get pissy on myself and I don't get down on myself if I break the streak. I just say to myself, well, tomorrow's another opportunity to get the streak going again. And the same could be said for reading the Bible, could be said for, making sure that I put date night for my wife, spending time with kids, all of that, right?
Yeah, I like that. Putting the streak together. That's good. Last question that we close these with. Do you believe balance is possible when it comes to these pillars? Do you believe balance is possible in our lives?
I think when you're trying to grow a business, if you're not intentional about exactly what you want the business to look like, it's going to look like something that you probably don't want it to look like. It's probably going to look like something where you're working way more than you should, more hours than you should, spending more time with the business than you should. So that's why I think it's just important to have a real vision of what you want your business to look like prior to just jumping in with both feet, like which many of us do, especially the entrepreneurial types. But is it possible to have balance? Yeah, I think it is. I mean, like I see guys who have balance. Now does it ebb and flow? Absolutely. There'll be seasons, and some of the seasons can be actually very small. Like, well, I know this week I'm going to be working like crazy, or I know for this month, because we're getting ready to acquire an asset, that I'm going to work my balls off. Right. Like, but that doesn't mean that like, I can't be intentional about getting the balance back. Right.
Yeah. I like that.
I think when we keep our eyes on it, when we really keep our eyes on the plan and the vision of what we want our personal lives to look like, then the business tends to fit in the place, fits in its place. If it's vice versa and the business sort of is the priority, then shit's going to get out of whack pretty fast.
Yeah, that's good. Great answer, Craig. Thank you so much. Guys, we talked a lot of stuff. There was book recommendations. There was church recommendations. If you're in Baltimore, I love it. RJ's going to make sure that's all in the show notes. Guys, a couple things I want to tell you about real quick, and there's going to be a lot more information about this that you're going to see coming out. But the Dads Alliance is getting ready to start up. We're putting that together all of the month of October, and you're going to be able to see that website come out in November where you can sign that up. Guys, that is going to be a membership where dads are just helping each other. So again, I just want to kind of give you a sneak preview of what that's going to be. I'm looking so forward to that, where we can collaborate, we can have each other's back, so we don't have to end up like the people we talked about, you know, in rehab because we didn't have anybody to reach out to, right? Or it didn't have to take a 4-hour drive across Highway 70, the state of Missouri, to a football game before somebody reached out. We want to make sure that that group is there for everyone, for us to be able to reach out to. So that's coming. Again, RJ, tell them where to find us and what to do on all the podcast stuff.
Well, you can find us in all the podcast outlets. So obviously you can download it from our website, which is thebalancedbusinessdad.com. Easy place to find all the episodes. You can always reach Dustin and I on our Facebook page. So facebook.com/thebbdad. That's an easy one. Ping us there. We can start a conversation. Those are the two best, but of course, find the podcast, all the usual podcast outlets, you know, whether it's Spotify and Apple and Google, and you pick them up from anywhere, download it, you know, rate it, review it. And of course, we always ask you to share it so that other dads and entrepreneurs like all of us and like you guys out there can hear these great conversations like Craig gave us today. It was fantastic.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks guys. Dad, stay balanced.